Ooh. My divine, incredible Christar family, I am so honored yet again to be here with you for this live read. It's always so special to get to share these live times with you. So, within this one, this has been a very interesting live read that we've been doing, and this will be part 4. This will be our final live read for the Love Bite. And as we get to check out this particular final live read for The Love Bite, Alien Interference in Human Relationships by Eve Lorgan, this one, there is a little bit within the final chapters that definitely do talk about how to assist, how to help if you've been in any of. But as I was recapping and kind of looking over it before we started today, I realized a lot of it is just kind of recapping analysis over the different types. So just to kind of know in today's reading, there is going to be a chapter within there, chapter 18, which is going to talk about therapeutic modalities and ways that we can support if we've been through any of these types of scenarios or situations. A lot of the other chapters are going to just kind of specifically talk about today in our part 4 about spiritual warfare, the stress and dysfunction that comes from it, psychic vampires, the connection to it with star seeds, alien redeemer, the occult history, poison maidens, sex dreams and cupid arrows, agape cupid, and the cathedral of the heart. These are going to be the main chapters we're looking at. It sounds like a lot, but they're very short in their analysis and recapping of this entire book. So within this live read, we've made it all the way through all of the chapters, all of the different scenarios, the different stories. The amount of feedback that I've gotten from all of you has been tremendous. I have felt so honored that I followed through with the guidance to read this book because, as triggering and as intense as this information is, I feel that for those that have been guided to listen to this, it's been very, very important, very validating in some ways for some of the things and the scenarios, and to begin to heal some of the places within. So, as always, I invite you as we go through these live reads, especially with materials like this, if it ever feels a little too intense, you can always just pause it, turn it off, come back to it later. There's no need to have to keep going with the live read. Always we want to shield up, to utilize our internal guidance system that connects to our higher self, to connect to our higher self in communion and connection to the core domain worlds. As we do this, we realize that that supports us by beginning to create these fields and shields around us that allow us to begin to easily filter out whatever doesn't serve or whatever isn't necessary, that we can take this to everything within life. So, with so much love, I invite you to make that connection, to make that connection daily to your guardian team. That this truly is, I think, so incredible and beautiful. And, as we get into these last chapters, there is going to be a recap of energy of what the entire content of the book was about. But one of the things that really I just want to summarize is that the key things are to find safe places to talk. If you ever have scenarios that come up, memories that really come up for you that start to bring some troubling or triggering types of memories, it is safe, someplace safe that you can bring forward these conversations in order to have that neutral, compassionate witnessing to allow that information to come through. I think we're going to see that's going to be one of the most important healing modalities for this. Secondarily, there does come this internal statement within that says, I do not consent. I do not consent to being a participant within any of these experimentations or in whatever has been going on. And so we began to take a lot of this to the spiritual courts. So part of this is recognizing that we do have sovereignty and free will, and that as we begin to connect to our higher self and our guardian councils and teams, we put that message and that directive out that says, no, I don't agree to this and I'm done with this. And it is really about calling that higher energy, that higher power. And when we say higher power, we are for some, it might be prayer or connecting to God or connecting to whomever feels the most highest vibration connection for you. But when we talk about higher power, what we're really wanting to connect to is to our Christ-star essence, our Christ-star vibration, our Christed consciousness. And that as we start to connect to this energy, our field starts to radiate these new frequencies that literally start to create blockers to a lot of this interference from these alien interferences. So as we evolve our own ascension mechanics, our own Kelon codes, 12-dimensional shield, 48-dimensional shield, activating our internal practice so that we break out of this matrix of illusion, we start to know what is happening. This is really one of the biggest things that we can start to do to start to stop these sorts of unwanted alien interference within our life. So within that, as we look at that, the main things again are going to be find places that feel safe to get support. Secondarily, call upon these higher energies, these higher powers, if you will, and that you are not giving your power away, but you are activating that energy within yourself as a soul sovereign being that is bringing this forward that says, stop, enough, I do not consent. So, and within that, we're going to look at this, especially when we talk about the actual love bite energy, where the emotions are influenced or triggers, where it is that love sick energy, or it is that energy that just can't seem to get those thoughts or energies out of the head when that bite happens. That we want to recognize what that is so that you direct your focus not to the other person that is being used as a manipulation within your energy field, but that you actually take whatever that manipulation of your emotional field, you redirect it to where that frequency is coming to flip the switch on or off to manipulate it, so that you start to basically yell at that energy and basically say, absolutely not. And as that begins to happen, there's a click that happens within our own energy field and our consciousness that starts to recognize the manipulation that's happening. So even if the emotions are flooding through our body, we easily start to disassociate from those because we're recognizing that it is artificial. It's not an authentic love connection. It's not an authentic emotion that is flowing through the body. So we can begin to direct it towards where those switches have been turning it on and off in order for us to create that disconnect from that so that we are not usable anymore in their experiments. So that'll be kind of a summary of the energy of the ways to work at this. So now let's just go ahead and dive right in. We have our final read. We have a few pages. It's a lot of chapters. We're going to do chapter 16 to chapter 26. So about 10 chapters, but not really any longer than any of the other reads. They're very short. So let's go ahead and dive right in. And we're going to be starting with the analysis. And this again is Love Bite, Alien Interference in Human Relationships by Eve Lorgan. And we ended our last chapter, chapter 15, with the stories, and now we're moving into analysis. So as we're starting here, we're going to start on chapter 16. So chapter 16, Spiritual Warfare. From a religious viewpoint, all of the cases presented represent forms of spiritual warfare. This term was introduced by the Christian communities to designate the degree of commitment one must assert to fight evil, any evil. In this case, I find it appropriate to apply the term to the fight against alien abductions and their profound after effects. The lyric line, "Onward Christian soldiers marching as to war," comes to mind, but New Age believers, Buddhists, and anyone with a spiritual side can understand spiritual warfare. It is the fight to save one's own soul, to fight against evil. To do this, one must become adept in spiritual warfare techniques, Christian or otherwise. Those who think the alien agenda is one of the benevolent one of benevolence, may disagree, but I am convinced the aliens are also conducting a kind of spiritual warfare against us. I am convinced that the aliens have set goals that are diametrically opposed to normal human values. Later, we will look at the spiritual warfare from the alien viewpoint, but first, we must go over what humans can do to fight back. It should be understood that no religion on earth advocates rape and abduction. In Judeo-Christian religious, the commandment, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, stands out. But the aliens are also in violation of the commandment against stealing, for certain abduction is the act of both theft of the body as well as theft of the mind as well as the soul. Most importantly, thou shalt not kill stands out as a violation because the alien agenda has forced some people to suicide and has possibly caused the entrapment of the soul. In many cases, a kind of death which allows the body to live on as a hollow shell while the abductee becomes nothing but a host for a walk in alien entity. I draw this observation from my own observational experience. In several sessions, I have come who claim the aliens walked inside of them to co-inhabit their bodies. I call this a hosting process, akin to a spiritual or demonic possession, wherein the alien heavily influences the thoughts and behaviors of the host while helping to perpetuate the alien agenda on Earth. The children of abductees and abducted children themselves may talk about their abduction experiences only to be told that they are just nightmares. Children often describe the alien intruders as monsters who come out of the closet or through the walls. The children are immediately invalidated when their parents or siblings tell them there is no such thing as a monster or an alien. The parental denial process sets up a vast wall of cognitive dissonance, which immediately lowers the child's sense of self-worth. Naturally, their self-esteem goes down because kids, even though they are full of imagination, generally know the difference between dream monsters and real monsters by a certain age. Some children abductees report that aliens, like rapists and child molesters, instructed them not to talk about their encounters, a pattern followed by all pedophiles. This secrecy part is part of the thrill for pedophiles and may add to vicarious sexual stimulation for the aliens too. It seems they are promoting and conducting secret keeping behavior. It is not okay to tell the truth. It is not okay to tell the truth. You will be admonished if you tell the truth. I think the bad aliens look for dysfunctional families and promote this kind of destructive behavior in normal families. Why? Because these kinds of families ensure secret keeping behavior and a steady supply of emotional misery, negative emotional energy, food for the aliens to feed upon. If not food, this system at least keeps the victims in a state of continual manipulation, distractions, and disempowerment. It is apparent that the aliens will go to great lengths to maintain secrecy. Their main security technique is to instill false memories. The other technique is to provide distraction so many that the abductee that is overwhelmed. In this state, the abductee is unable to take the serious look inward. Outright deception and threats, as well as demonstrated in Ted Rice's case when his grandmother was deceived and assaulted and then threatened for her strong protective instinct, are also commonly reported. I call these reprisals. Our democratic social structure reinforces the perception that aliens, especially fascist aliens, do not exist. Because no one believes the abductee story, he or she often turns inward for a period of darkness, then may suddenly act out in rebellion against parents, school, religion, or society as a whole. However, if one tells about their alien contact experiences with a positive spin, then they're often rewarded. The problem with the positive alien encounters is that they are often used as cover stories for the aliens to hide behind. This occurs often when they masquerade as angels of light. This pattern is seen more often today than ever before and has been uncovered by many researchers such as Carla Turner. I do, however, maintain a hopefulness that good ETs can and do exist, but this is probably a minority of the extraterrestrial contacts. Frustrated abductees often question their own sanities, not wanting to believe that they may be victims of anything so potentially frightening. Both adults and children abductees who have been denied validation have a tendency to distrust their own feelings, remain in denial, and even act out in anger, especially as assorted other anxiety traits begin to appear. Those who have turned anger inward will become depressed or even suicidal, depending on the extent of trauma endured. So, that particular chapter is actually really quite important. For us to recognize, and she brings up an incredible point within that it's like, oh well, if it's a positive alien abduction, then that's usually rewarded, but a lot of the talk about negative alien abduction, I find this goes lateral, that if people talk about any kind of spirit possession, sometimes even hauntings or these kinds of things, that this becomes uncomfortable for many people and they want to shut it down or blame the person that is sharing it. So many times abductees will be blamed as if they're the ones that maybe actually instigated or promoted these types of things. And so you can see the correlation between there of kind of being targeted by these energies that many times are attempting to host or overtake the actual body. Interestingly enough, I just posted a video on shadow dancers and how to deal with them. And this is really about the Metatronic reversal energies and the beings from the Wizadek system connected to some of the hybrid races and the phantom races. That is exactly what they're trying to do, is they target especially the higher vibrational beings in order to basically overtake the body. They want to basically get the consciousness so dysfunctional that they can actually overtake the body. So if you're interested in that, you can definitely check out that video. Chapter 17, Stress and Dysfunction. Post-traumatic stress disorder. A symptom cluster known as shell shock in World War II is common among those who have had alien encounters. If you have ever been in a close call auto accident, a little bit about this syndrome. You may feel fine immediately after the accident because the adrenaline is subsiding, but once you get a chance to park the car, you start to shake and maybe even cry. You say, wow, that was a close call. You break out in a sweat and promise to drive more carefully in the future. Now magnify this experience several times and imagine going through it chronically, and you will get some glimmering into the pain abductees go through. They have few, if any, to talk to about this problem, so they remain emotionally isolated. If an abduction was extremely traumatic, the characteristic symptoms may be a series of panic attacks and a sense of helplessness. This initial reactions are commonly followed by partial or complete amnesia. This amnesia may include re-experiencing and distorting images of the abduction, recurrent unrelated nightmares, flashbacks, and avoidance of stimuli associated with the event. This in clinical work as emotional numbing. The abductee may develop increased or decreased arousal to sexual stimuli, oversensitivity to normal stimuli such as noises in the night, fear of the dark, and sleep disorders such as insomnia and night terrors. These are very similar to reactions reported by rape and molestation victims. Young children may express their trauma through obsessive compulsive play. They may exhibit a marked change in orientation towards the future, for example, a foreshortened view of childhood, fatalism, thanatophobia, which is a morbid fear of death, or other philosophical issues that require an adult understanding and seem pressed upon a child. Children should not be worried about career or marriage, but many traumatized children worry about these things every day. Fixation on these worries leads to cynicism and negative attitudes in teenage years. The psychic numbing or diminished responsiveness to stimuli usually begins soon after the traumatic event. Thus, emotional anesthesia causes the abductee to feel detached and estranged from other people, which in childhood can inevitably lead to the loss of a job or even an entire career. Other symptoms for traumatized abductee teenagers are rebellious acting out, promiscuity, drugs, substance abuse, and bizarre dress. These symptoms are not unique to abductees, but a juvenile delinquency pattern can be traced to many childhood events, whereas the abductee based pattern often comes on suddenly, even in cases where neither parent was abusive. Extreme phobias of going to the doctor or dentist, or even preoccupation with horror scenes such as blood and gut films, or suddenly embracing the goth or gang lifestyle, have also been reported. At very young ages, the trauma victim is likely to develop dissociative amnesia, loss of time, blackouts, with concomitant poor coping skills. Often, abuse is already occurred within the abductees' families, compounding the issues of abuse by the aliens. As the child grows older, severe forms of personality damage may manifest in the forms of overcompensatory behavior, obsessive door and window locking, perfectionism, poor self image, narcissistic preoccupations, and psychopathic or dissociative disorders. Most abductees do not exhibit the severe personality damage, although those who were most traumatized will lead and tend to have more of these symptoms in varying degrees. For those in the mind control projects like MK Ultra, this is more noticeable. These are trauma-based mind control programs, and in adults, bipolar wavering between egoism and depression is common. In the case of Charles and Sarah, Charles was told he was chosen to be one of the Savior helpers. This messianic appeal often works, especially in cases aligned with fundamentalist Christians and many New Age groups, because the believer desperately wants to believe in the second coming of a Messiah figure. The aliens simply interpolate their own agenda and pose themselves as representatives of the hero to come. This illusion allows the abductees to feel good about themselves for a short time, but inevitably the spark of life fades. Sometimes the target is re-abducted and reprogrammed, especially when the cover memories of the abduction is seriously questioned or threatened in any way. Daryl Sims, a well known abduction investigator, has also noted that some abductees do an about face in their attitudes towards the aliens once the alien agenda is seriously challenged. After a series of abrupt and unplanned personality changes, the abductee in denial grows even more defensive, and left unchecked, the defensiveness can grow into a downward spiral of dysfunctional behavior or even violence. The person then usually denies being abducted, then gradually switches to defending the aliens. If these symptomatic defenses remain unresolved, a Stockholm syndrome may result. In that case, the contactee sings the praises of his or her captors, such as these extraterrestrials, and any negative alien abduction information is now seen as fear based and anathema to one's spiritual evolution. What's happening here? The alien defending behaviors of the now zealous contactees are reminiscent of the cult members of the Resh Nesh or Symbionese Libertarian Army. I'm sorry, I don't know those names very well. The SLA, the political group who abducted Patty Hearst in the 1970s. Is there hope for these abductees once they are already in the clutches of their alien handlers? Are not our human rights inalienable, as Thomas Jefferson said? Perhaps back then, Thomas Jefferson knew something about how easy it is to have our freedom stripped away until we are nothing more than puppets of a foreign power. Back then, it was England. Now, it's the aliens or whoever is acting behind their image. Have we, as a race, been manipulated and deceived into agreeing with the aliens only to end up their mind controlled slaves carrying out their agenda of world domination? Is the picture as bleak as it sounds? In a few of the love bite cases, such as Darlene, Sophia, and Angelina, they have challenged the aliens through spiritual warfare. I believe that this is a productive start to cut at the very root of the alien abduction phenomena. If we do not first become disturbed enough to take a hard look at the dynamics of the dark side of the abductions, then we are destined to become slaves in an alien New World Order unless we wake up. Yes, there is hope. I found a number of spiritual warrior abductees who have inspired me to bring a message of hope that our true freedom can be won. But this victory will only come through a process of love, determination, faith, and increased awareness. In essence, one's love for the truth must surpass one's programming, one's fear of reprisals and peer pressure. Angelina and some of her abductee friends believe the aliens are working hand in hand with secret government agencies. In their opinion, this cabal is using the fear of future disasters to train and control abductees. These foreseeable events include massive earthquakes and floods, the effects of biological warfare, nuclear accidents, pollution, and political coups. A growing number of ufologists wonder about this dilemma. Is this just a cover up story programmed into abductees to keep them compliant, or are the aliens actually planning to create havoc on Earth? Are the aliens training their chosen bloodlines for future survival in a world cataclysm they know will occur because they caused it? We may never know what the aliens are planning. It is likely that the alien agenda spans hundreds, if not thousands, of years. If the aliens are planning actual disasters, perhaps they think they are already in control. Angelina reports that during her alien orchestrated testing and training session, she was taught basic survival skills and emergency medical care, even triage. Angelina's training scenarios took place at night in lucid dreams, as mentioned before. Some of these dreams may really be tests designed to evaluate the subject's ability to recall what the abductors want them to recall. Abductions often occur many times over many years, as we have seen in several of the cases presented. I need to make it clear that abductions by aliens often occur without any UFO sightings at all. More often than not, the aliens intrude directly into the living space of the abductee or through an interdimensional portal or doorway. Whatever the method, it is still an invasion of privacy and a violation of human rights. Some victims are shattered easily by the constant onslaught of alien visitation. Others have a natural sense of spiritual warfare and good ego integration, allowing them to defend themselves. Their ability to mitigate post-traumatic stress helps them cope very well considering their experiences, but the easily shattered victims have a rough time in recovery. So that one's, really important for us to understand because this is the stress and dysfunction of this. She's mentioning within here that this may be something that has occurred for hundreds, if not thousands of years on the planet. We know through even looking at a lot of the information, such as Voyager's books, it's been going on for millions, actually billions of years within our solar system. And a lot of them are just really dysfunctional hybrids that don't have any ethical compass to a lot of what they're doing. So I feel like there's such a dynamic to all of this that it truly is really important when we implement this spiritual discernment to what is happening so that we don't allow any of that to happen anymore. Let's look at this chapter. This one's going to be a little bit longer, and it's talking about therapeutic modalities. So, as we're reading this to you guys, I'd love to hear from you guys in the chat, those of you that are here live, and just some of your thoughts of what has come through. Maybe what are your tools that you have implemented that have helped you break free to get to a place that you're starting to get more clarity? Because, as we all speak more openly about this, this is what is going to disempower them more and more. So within this, therapeutic modalities, chapter 18. The after effects of the mind control carried out by the abductors is the most difficult symptom to work with. The compartmentalized and disassociated memories of alien encounters are not necessarily trauma induced, but the amnesia is a fact post-traumatic stress, mainly because the masking programs block recall. The only way to overcome these multifarious programs is to chip away at the conditioning until the abductee begins to exhibit sufficient recall and support to cope on their own. Repressed memories of mental and physical trauma associated with the abduction experience manifest themselves in a myriad of ways and, at times, when they are least expected. The alien technology is very powerful. Military brainwashing techniques pale by comparison, but once the aliens have conducted these experiments, the subject is tossed back into our cultural ocean like a fish. Images first seen in the alien clinical setting are repressed by the alien mind control and other techniques. But the normal human mind is built to remember, and many abductees have visions which often pop up in grotesque forms. This gives the therapist a real challenge. The images are not always directly reflective of the traumatic experiences or events, but are instead symbolic, like generalized phobias and dream images. I want to actually touch on that. So, if you guys are utilizing things like regressive hypnosis to assist you, if you are utilizing things like body talk, or dream language, so allowing yourself to maybe get more versed in lucid dreaming and dream recall work in order to do healing work in the dream time. All of these are very, very powerful. Of these three, I would really highly recommend as modalities to work with. And I will say this is absolutely 100%. I see this all the time working with clients, is that at first it will feel very much like sometimes symbology, sometimes it'll just feel like I'm trapped in a room, sometimes it'll feel like, oh, it's just a shadowy being. And there are ways to be with whatever is showing up because, again, part of it is symbolic, part of it is just still part of the encoding of the mind slide or the false memory overlays. So, if we can start to chip away at the memories, they'll have kind of like secondary slides that'll come in and be like, oh, well, you'll see a monster, you'll see something grotesque or scary, or you'll see that it's a family member that's doing this to you. I cannot tell you the amount of times that there are people that have repressed abduction memories and will have memories that start to seem to uncover of having molestation or inappropriate touch or things like this from family members. And within that, many times that itself is still an overlay. The aliens will use the individuals in our life around us so that as you start to tap into the actual physical memories of what is happening, you'll still see the wrong images around. So I do invite you to be aware of that so that as you be with this, you can constantly be aware of really this phrase that says, I command to dissolve all veils of deception. I command to collapse and dissolve and delete all mind slides, all false overlays, all movie projections that are overlaid into the frequencies of my mind, and I command to see truth now. And you can keep collapsing it and collapsing it, and eventually you'll start to see the authentic, and you'll feel it a little bit different than the false overlays that are played in there. So I do like to definitely kind of give that little insight in there. So within there, again, it's saying it's not always directed. It could instead be symbolic, like generalized phobias or dream images. So again, they have access to our subconscious, so they will keep trying to put specific images on us. So, for example, abductees may show fear of dark-eyed animals and spiders, when in fact they are morbidly afraid of gray aliens. Normal phobias can usually be treated with classical methodologies, but alien abduction therapeutic strategies require an additional twist. The feared object seems nonsensical to the uninformed therapist, and the therapist tends to steer the victim away from the idea that that might have been an abduction or towards something more traditional as a fear of abandonment. Mama took my teddy bear away. Yeah, that's going to be true. A lot of therapists, if they're not versed on alien abduction, they're going to try to slide it over into something like, oh, well, it was because you were abandoned or you just didn't feel safe with your parents or loved or something. They'll try to make it 3D when it's not. The most common familial deformity is the mutual dysfunctional unit, such as a married couple with dysfunctional traits before they were abducted, made worse by the abduction. The case studies tend to depict the aliens as looking for already weakened marriages and easily manipulated people because they are easier to exploit, easier to flatter, and easier to brainwash. Hence, these people make the perfect puppets to carry out the clandestine alien agenda. Dysfunctionality, as I use it here and elsewhere in this book, can be defined as a behavior that results in an unhealthy relationship. Secret keeping behavior and the covert no talk rule, identical to the Sibboleth invoked by child molesters, forces the abductee to live a false double life, which in and of itself is dysfunctional and prone to all manner of mental injury, especially stress and free floating anxiety. The avoidance of open and honest communication and a natural inclination to distrust in one's own feelings often thrusts abductees into habitually negative social patterns. They may see foreboding trouble in causal contracts, even in social contracts, as seemingly trouble free as going to the grocery store or filling up a car with gas. Many abductees seem beaten and are downright paranoid. In some cases, it is justified, especially if they really are being harassed or are under surveillance by government agencies. But in most cases, the clinical paranoia can be traced to the effects of post traumatic stress, as often observed in survivors of war, such as the Vietnam veterans. Many abductees have coped quite well considering the forces against them. I do not want to give the impression that all abductees are totally dysfunctional, but in my opinion, the denial and enforced secrecy of these issues leads to advancing family problems and must be dealt with before the subject can practice true insight. The abduction process preys upon the ease of manipulability already available in dysfunctional families. This self-same families may be specific bloodlines of genetically important material to the aliens. Nonetheless, I believe they are being exploited into a more pliable resource for alien usage. Contrary to a growing stereotype, most abductees have not undergone hypnosis to recover their memories of alien encounters. Few can afford professional counseling or hypnosis, or even if they can, they usually avoid it because of the mainstream psychological and medical opinions against hypnosis currently prevalent. Quite frankly, the medical and psychological profession is woefully uninformed about the abduction syndrome. Many abductees seek group help because they have already been through the shrink mill and or sense that normal therapeutics can't help them. I think for this reason, abductee support groups are springing up in many areas of the world. The one symptom cluster that is common for abductees is codependency within love relationships. This term was first coined to describe relating patterns of spouses or close family members of alcoholics, substance abusers, or child abusers, but has now been generalized to apply to anyone who loses self esteem in a relationship due to the dominance needs of one or both parties. The hallmark of codependent behavior is the maintenance of the status quo in addictive or even abusive patterns. This can be any pattern that effectively keeps the dysfunctional behavior going while, at the same time, suppressing all attempts to make positive changes. This persistence of negativity is highly destructive and is usually acted out in ways that perpetuate more family problems, a perfect target for the aliens. Codependent persons live their life as if they are walking on eggshells. They live with a constant fear or unconscious anxiety not to rock the boat or confront core issues, especially those which will elicit strong emotions, admissions of wrongs, or change the equilibrium of the relationship, however false. The codependent person may go to great lengths to please others to avoid feelings of rejection and abandonment, Peer pressure is easily succumbed to, especially negative peer pressure. The abductee may join a cult, something like Heaven's Gate, and may become so habituated to defending the messianic dream that the person would rather die and hurt others than get well or hurt another member of the cult. They see wellness as defined by the non abductee community as a complete impossibility. In therapy, the subject needs to be confronted with their incongruent behavior. This thematic resistance to help can to abductees who enter into dysfunctional relationships that maintain the denial of abduction issues. I've seen a higher than average number of female abductees enter into controlling and abusive marriages. Here again, we see denial at work because the spouse usually makes a point of despairing the abductee, especially if they make efforts towards healing and growth. In an unhealthy marriage, the abductee need not see or cope with the issues of the abduction. Their attention and energy is drawn to relationship issues and repetitive crises instead. The abductee can avoid the core abduction related issues by staying distracted in a bad relationship. But to be resolved, the dark inner truth of their experience centers on the begging need to be heard and healed in a forgiving manner. But they are rarely going to see this as long as they remain in their poor relationships. As stated earlier, unhealthy coping skills may involve addictions of various types. Addictions can be the abuse of any kind of substance or repetitive behavior that serves to keep the person in denial of unresolved psychological issues. In this case, avoidance of abduction related trauma, pain, terror, fear, grief, abandonment, and despair of rejection. I've come across professional psychologists who claim that the majority of post traumatic stress in abductees and dysfunctional family issues in the abductees are not from alien abductions, but from other more easily explained psychological theories. That may be true in part, but in families where abductions have occurred for several generations, the denial and trauma of hidden abductions compounds and may even create the dysfunctional behaviors. This fact and the observation that abductions associated with negative aliens increase when the emotional chaos increases. It is the basis, in part, for this assumption. Resolution and healing of alien abduction related issues can only be complete when false and misleading psychological swamp gas theories are put to rest and hopefully disproved. In many cases, the therapeutic process extended over many years. Sometimes daily phone calls were necessary to keep the client stabilized during extreme emotional processing. Long-term aftercare is necessary for the complete recovery of the abductee, especially if reality-shattering trauma was uncovered. This occurrence in the case of Ted Rice was written about with great passion by James Walden in his book, The Ultimate Alien Agenda. The main difference between alien abduction trauma and typical trauma stems from the aliens' need to track and reabduct some abductees. The traumas with abduction because the abductions continue. In this context, true recovery is not possible unless the abductions stop. The aliens seem to be willing to study the human subject regardless of how we feel about it. They are indifferent to us. Not only do the aliens continue to take certain individuals, but they will also act in ways to prevent the abductee from stopping abductions. Aliens do everything they can to discourage therapy, the joining of a support group, and the gathering of factual information necessary to heal and empower abductees. Unless it is part of the indoctrination program serving the alien agenda, they don't want you to do it. The case histories of Ted Rice, Sophia, Darlene, and Angelina demonstrate the aliens' truth, detracting methods. UFO researchers, abduction therapists, psychological and medical professionals dealing with abductees often overlook this alien mind control factor. Core issues of abductees cannot be fully addressed until the control factor of the alien presence is acknowledged. This includes acquisition of evidence of alien abductions. This also explains why there's so much chaos and confusion in the UFO field. Health issues are also a frequent complaint of abductees. The most common medical anomalies are in the area of um, gynecological and sexual organs, allergies, skin rashes, autoimmune disorders, chronic fatigue, migraines, and endocrine abnormalities. Some abductees are also so affected by their health problems that they are on a permanent disability, not able to work a regular job. This is super key, you guys. One of the things I just kind of want to pause on here for a second is one, we're recognizing that this many times is multi-generational. This is something that sometimes the abductee will be the first one in a family line, but like she's stating in here, there could be a, an attraction to the blood of that family line that has specific coatings or whatever um, energy that they're looking for within the blood, sequences, chemicals, whatever it is, genetic lineage lines, hybridization lines. The list could go on, right? And so there's many times familial targeting. And within that, we see this as massive types of dysfunction within families. And primarily, you're going to see this through dysfunction in families that are out there saying, like, oh, this parent was narcissistic, this one was codependent. We never talked about anything. Everything was kept a secret from everyone else, so on and so forth. And, a lot of times this is on the outward side like it's just a dysfunctional family, but when you get down into it, there's always kind of the underlining little tidbits where you're seeing the missing memories, the nightmares in childhood. Then later when you get older, y'all get together and y'all talk and y'all realize, oh, I had those kind of nightmares at night too, where the bits of information come out later, but by then it's so seated in. So that's important to understand. And then on top of that, that is also going to start disintegrating our own health and well-being. Just the fact of going through all these traumas for that significant amount of time in life is going to already create a lot of sometimes weakness within energy systems within the body. And then on top of that, a lot of the abduction experiences, whether it's the implants, whether it's the abduction surgeries, the hybrid programs, the ovary harvesting, whatever kind of things they're doing, they're not always doing them with the greatest of care. So then it can literally result in migraines all the time that just feel like they don't go away. I notice the autoimmune would be probably the top thing that if someone has gone through a lot of abduction, I would be looking at autoimmune, and especially a lot of the things like autoimmune, Lyme's disease, top of the list that we're gonna see. And then aside from that, reproductive. So cysts, feeling as though there's growth in areas, extra pain in kind of the reproductive organs for men and women, but a lot of times it's the women because of the hybrid programs. So, and then of course, allergies within that, skin rashes, these kinds of things. And just a sense of fatigue. And that fatigue a lot of times comes from just the energy depletion and then the buildup of stress through these experiences. So I invite you to really check into this and just again, just seeing for you guys, as you're putting these pieces together and looking at this, I think a lot of us, we start with the evaluation of our family dynamics, right? Was my family healthy? Was it dysfunctional? Did I feel nurtured? Was there um healthy bonding, all of these things? And a lot of times we will attack our family experience as the point zero of our problems, but we'll know that many times it just doesn't seem to answer everything. And so for those of you that are feeling this, I definitely invite you, to really start to kind of put a lot of these bigger pieces together so that the memories can come back, the dreams can open up again, and the veils dissolve around the false holographic memories so that the truth can be seen. The truth allows us to really start to build a stronger energy that they don't want to fight against. We got to imagine that, yes, they have powerful technology. They do, sure. But in the end, they are going to look for abductees that are easy. Look at it. This whole chapter is talking about it. It's talking about they want the broken, the dysfunctional, the mentally already sad, hurt. I don't feel loved. I don't feel wanted. I don't feel like I'm good enough. They're already looking for those of us that have had that kind of wounding in childhood, because it's easy. It's super easy to manipulate a child that hasn't had healthy bonding and healthy processing so that then they can come in. When we start to heal, it starts to become more difficult for them and they don't want it. So that is also a really powerful thing for us to recognize as part of the healing process. So yeah, and I'm just seeing the posts here, you guys. You guys are amazing. Yeah, I just feel it so much, you guys, as we get to share this together. So again, health issues, very frequent complaint of abductees. Says I've encountered situations in which the abductee was suddenly struck ill as a result of an alien attack. Disinformation and mind fogging tactics, unusual health problems such as panic attacks and anxiety, heart problems, severe back pain, migraines, nausea, extreme exhaustion have resulted from the abductees' efforts to search for the truth of their experiences. These blatant health issues and coincidental events and accidents are not simple psychological self-sabotage, but something much more revealing. The closer they get to the truth, released from their bondage to alien control, the more the pain and punishment seems to emerge, almost as if the aliens were extracting reprisals. And I so sympathize with those of you that go through this at this level. Um, I can say personally, I definitely was aware to a degree, but it wasn't debilitating to the point where I have actually witnessed this with some of you that definitely go through this on a much more extreme level, where beginning to break free, it almost kind of like triggers these like um accelerated attacks on the body, excruciating many times the pain that can come from these experiences. So I sympathize with those of you because a lot of times most people are just gonna not know what to do, and they're just like, I'm so sorry, and then you feel people moving away from you because they just feel like, oh, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do. And so right here, success in a therapeutic fashion with abductees can be achieved if these basic steps are followed. So here's her steps. So again, she worked with a lot of groups, a lot of clients. So let's see what her steps were for working through this process. Number one was to seek counseling and support with knowledgeable sources. Perfect. I love that. Prayer and meditation. So definitely seeking some sort of higher connection. Stop addictions and secret keeping behavior. This one's huge. So again, pretty much all addictions and addictive behaviors are going to come from some sort of attachment energy. So beginning to clear that out is going to be definitely helpful to have more clarity. The key thing here, I think this is huge. Stop secret keeping behavior. Like honestly, put it out on the table. Truth. If you've ever been raised in a family where secret keeping was the way, oh my goodness gracious, it is detrimental. And when you start to put everything on the table, I will tell you, it is one of the most liberating things out there to not be bound by these secrets any longer. Stop defending the aliens. This is tricky, right? Because a lot of individuals, we recognize there are guardian families. So we have to differentiate. And we don't want to just be blanket saying, oh, aliens. Aliens is a very, very, very broad term, and we cannot say good or bad to the word alien. It's almost like on an individual by individual basis, let alone species by species basis. And we want to recognize that we need to be authentic and real with ourselves about how manipulative they are and literally how duped we have been. And sometimes this is actually part of the human nature. The human nature is that they will defend something that is wrong rather than admit that being wrong many times. That there is a sense of like, okay, well, I believe this truth so much that if it's not true anymore, I feel my whole world will fall apart. So I have to believe it's true, and I can't not believe it's true. You'll see this with a lot of people like diehard religions, and certain kinds of things like that. It's just like they will cling on to it, almost kind of like when we were kids, scared of the dark or something that was watching us. What did we do? We wanted to put a blanket over our head. It was like, no, I'm just gonna hide. I'm gonna put my head under the pillow. Well, that doesn't work. It's like, well, we're maybe hiding under the pillow, but it doesn't mean whatever's there isn't there anymore. And a lot of times individuals are doing that where they would rather just see the light and fluffy, the rainbow dolphin crystal kind of energy to things than to recognize literally how dark things might look. And so therefore it's this energy of that we've got to stop defending them. We need to get out of dysfunctional relationships. Probably one of the most difficult thing that I see people challenged with is recognizing being in a dysfunctional relationship, yet literally still coming up with hundreds of reasons why you can't leave that relationship. And there is no good reason to not be able to leave a dysfunctional relationship. It just feels impossible when you're in it, but absolutely. Talk to anyone who has made it out of a dysfunctional relationship. It's that spell will break and the clarity will come. Develop positive, supportive, and healthy relationships. Absolutely. Inculcate a strong love for the truth and a fighting spirit until alien programming loses its power over you. Absolutely. I love that. What a great list. So, some steps to begin to work with this. The strategies of dealing with abductees must be multidisciplinary. Not only should we act in a therapeutic capacity, but the entire field of work must be thought of as ongoing spiritual warfare, a battle in which the helping party must discipline themselves like an intelligence operative. Powerful, powerful chapter. Ah, so beautiful. Thank you so much. Oh, well, thank you for that gift. I so grateful, sharing so much love with each of you on the chat. To be able to go through this topic, I definitely feel the more we talk about it, the more we are stepping out of that secret keeping, the more we are just laying truth right out on the line. So definitely let's keep that going. So that chapter was primarily the chapter that was going to talk about a lot of the therapies and the techniques. Now we have a bunch of short chapters that are coming up that are just, again, just talking a little bit more about some of the different aspects of it, so how we can deal with it from each of these angles. So now, how would we deal with this? Through the idea of psychic vampires. Chapter 19, Psychic Vampires. There can be no doubt that the aliens have human behavioristic targets as goals. These targets are known to us as mate selection, matters of love, romance, and matters of the soul. But I think it should be clear by this point that the aliens need to farm our emotional energy. To me, it's clear that they are, as the hippies used to say, psychic vampires. They want, and if they are not careful, will get our most important asset, which is our unique human creative energy, our love of life itself. Our main defense against this vampirism is self-esteem, prayer, and support group. But abductees rarely seek out helping bodies simply due to the lack of professional support. If I have one message to convey, it is that anyone who even thinks they may have been abducted should seek out an information and support system as soon as possible. Spiritual warfare from the alien perspective seems to be conducted by inflicting pain on selected victims, partially to experiment and partially to puppet those souls back into society to destabilize our normally peaceful way of life. These extremes are more apparent with the reptilian abductees or abductions. Their medical warfare efforts manifest themselves as the after effects of experiments and procedures in which some types of medical manipulation, often sexual, is performed. These procedures, from what we have seen, are not always in the best interest of the abductee, but are employed according to alien agenda. They are usually invasive and without consent, making them a form of rape. The most common physical after effects of an abduction are bruises, cuts, scoop marks, pain, exhaustion, and fatigue. In addition, latent signs occur months or weeks later in the form of gynecological and sexual problems, pregnancy, autoimmune disorders, and frequent illness. Rashes, burns, and even symptoms of radiation poisoning have been reported. Some illness and medical conditions have occurred as a direct result of the victim's willingness to fight back, especially when the victim's resistance takes the form of gathering information on the alien agenda. In the cases where the aliens have not succeeded in breaking the will of the abductee, they tend to track and elongate the relationship, primarily to harass and reprogram the target victim, if and when they get up the gumption to come out of the closet and protest. Alien punishment against revelation took place in the cases of Sophia and Darlene, but I have seen this halting effect in other cases. It is possible that some of these anomalous health problems are controlled by alien implants used to track victims like farm animals. Implants may employ forms of new tech, nano engine technology, which releases unknown drugs or chemicals into the bloodstream in a highly controlled and subclinical fashion. And the effects are sometimes indirect when, for example, the aliens reduce the victim's libido strength to such an extent that they can no longer derive pleasure from sex. The nanotech too, I think it was really interesting for us to see within the DNA and the RNA, the mRNA, and a lot of the doctors and the scientists that were examining things under the microscope have physically been able to see the self-replicating technology that is actually flowing right within our blood. And I think it's amazing that, these conversations about this 25, 30, even longer ago is massive. But for us to recognize that, looking at this statement here, this tech which releases unknown drugs and chemicals into the bloodstream is a highly controlled and subclinical type of effect onto the body. That's going to change our mood, our thoughts. It's changing the libido of people, whether they have a high sex drive, low sex drive, all of these kinds of things. Again, it's just playing with humans because, I like to joke sometimes that we're just a chemistry set. We're consciousness embodied in these bodies, which is just this chemistry set. And just the food we eat can change our mood. Our butt, our all of the energy within us, like so like our gut biome energy and what is going on in our gut can directly affect our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings, our energy levels. So we can imagine that there's just so many ways that they got the advanced technologies to abduct us. First of all, they're probably quite adept at a lot of these things without hesitation. So we want to get not only our mental health back, but even our physical health back into the sense of recognizing some of these influences. The reprisal-like illnesses are a result of what I believe to be detracting efforts by the aliens. They have demonstrated quite clearly that they not only want to manipulate their victims, but are determined to avoid detection and will do anything to avoid disclosure, including assassination and the use of chemicals or even cancer. I've actually heard a lot too, stuff like dementia and Alzheimer's many times is an orchestrated thing that is brought on to individuals in order to basically take them out in that way, which is heartbreaking. Outright murder can be suspected in instances where the abductee was given chemicals, biological cultures, or toxins, which could lead to a slow death or a wasting away of functionality. The slower the death, the more deniable the murder is. In addition to the symptoms listed earlier, I've interviewed abductees who present with painful fibroids, adhesions, scar tissue, all of these from repeated medical procedures. In addition, abductees commonly report the rapid onset of chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, and severe migraines. Some of these health issues are so debilitating that the abductee is in a constant state of pain and eventual economic bondage over not even being able to pay the medical bills. At least half of the abductees in my study lost or did not carry medical insurance, making the economic hardships even more painful. Many who do have insurance visit doctors to no avail, since the doctors, no matter how sincere and ethical, are baffled by their symptoms. Other examples of imposed hardships, both in the literature and in my case database, are plentiful. Surveillance is common, and interference with telephone lines is almost standard. This extends to surface and electronic mail, internet activities, as well as actual physical surveillance with other high tech equipment. This is more pronounced in victims of mind control. The government agencies involved tend to sort out the claimants. The abductees who they fear are most are the credible witnesses, the unbroken, perfectly rational subjects. The broken and bogus people are of no threat, but the folks who can recover, remember, and argue plausibly on television or in other media are an irritation. The aliens and whoever works with them will have a hard time discrediting someone who has their wits about them and works every day at some productive vocation. About two-thirds of the people I work closely with are of this more intelligent type. This is why the constructive UFO support groups are so threatening to the powers that be. Not only are the abductees getting together, sharing valuable information, but they are also getting help. Some abductees are followed by unmarked government vehicles, often plain white vans, as we noted in Suzanne's case. Quite often, abductees and researchers have reported being buzzed by black helicopters. Now, lots of people see choppers every day, but seldom do they come over your house close enough to break dishes or hover outside your window and move on. This phenomena is so common as to be almost laughable. Art Bell, the noted radio journalist and the best-selling author, has been buzzed several times at his remote location near Pahrump, Nevada. Bell thinks the choppers are used for intimidation as much as for surveillance. It's as if the black choppers are being used as warnings. My editor, who generally does not believe in UFOs, was buzzed and is on record as having the black chopper hover outside of his farmhouse window for several minutes while he was setting type for this book. This may seem even more unbelievable when we realize that up until that time he thought of the farm as his private retreat, and he believed due to through preparations that nobody knew about his location. His comment was short: somebody does not want this book to come out. One other incident left a good deal of physical evidence behind. The helicopter flew so close to the home that it caused serious property damage for one abductee I corresponded with. This was not a hallucination. The chopper had flown over several times, causing the windows of the building to crack and even blow out. Overt surveillance tactics are probably designed for psychological intimidation, the very definition of psychic rape. Rather than do physical harm, they can cause mental anguish, just like a stalker can do great harm without making physical contact. The desired effect is to keep the victim in a state of fear and powerlessness. Telling people about these flybys will make the victim seem paranoid and uncredible. This partially explains the paucity of information in the real nature of the aliens and their activities, especially as we explore the relationship between the helicopter and aerial surveillance flybys. Not all of them are black or even helicopters, incidentally, and the alien agenda. The case of Mia Adams demonstrates an elaborately orchestrated bonding drama between Mia and an FBI agent code named Jordan. In it, we saw how truly interwoven the aliens, the government, and the government has become. Jordan experienced a love obsession and seems to have been prepared for the meeting decades ahead of time. For many years, both Bian and Jordan were surveyed by government operatives, FBI, and other clandestine groups during their relationship. If I am right, then Jordan was parked in the FBI until the opportune moment when he was to be used to court Mia. The relationship between Jordan and Mia seemed to be the key point of interest for an alien experiment involving human bonding of individuals who share synchronous energy fields and or common genetic materials. It is my opinion that human government and alien intelligences cooperated to a certain extent in this human bonding program. Admittedly, there is much debate as to the government's involvement in UFO and alien abduction matters. One camp is convinced UFOs do not exist, but the government is in the business of making them seem real so that they can blame UFOs for all manner of black projects carried out by secret government agencies. Whatever the case may be, there appears to be a human element operating in conjunction with the UFO phenomena. Based on what I have observed in a number of abduction reports, I think certain branches in the intelligence community are interacting on behalf of national security to prevent release of certain information. I also think that the aliens employ human operatives to maintain secrecy and provide disinformation through a variety of means, which probably include but is not limited to government, military, aerospace, and intelligence personnel. The idea that aliens use human operatives is a scary thought, considering the level of mind control technology they possess. Many of these humans may be nothing more than unknowing sleepers, fringe zealots, possibly even pseudo patriots, known in spook slang as cutouts. Such was a possibility in the breakup of Suzanne's support group. I believe some of these intelligence gathering, security, and warfare measures can be carried out through psychic spying or remote viewing, combined with high technology, a nefarious combination. Psychological warfare tactics are evident by mind control techniques such as the memory suppression and installation of false memories of the abduction, screen memories, and other forms of mnemonic manipulation. In some cases, the abductee discovers through repressive or regressive hypnosis or memory flashbacks that the aliens projected imagery into their minds while performing medical procedures. For example, while an abductee was undergoing a gynecological exam or sperm extraction, the aliens may project pleasant sexual memories to facilitate the process. Such a dynamic occurred in Sophia's case when, during an abduction related memory, she was told to relax prior to the rectal exam while being hypnotically told that Dave was doing the procedure. In the case of Janice and Alex, the aliens instilled dream imagery of a foreplay scene where a desire for sexual contact was instilled into the minds of the love bite couple. Janice became lucid within the abduction dream, questioning the simulation, and this triggered an awareness in the alien orchestrated scenario, which was experienced as a dream. At that point, she blinked out. One of the most common implanted scenes takes the form of an apocalypse or cataclysm. This is so commonly reported that I suspect it is a fundamental insertion dream, a fear process designed to humble and then flatter the victim. In one case, a female abductee was taken to cubicle-like rooms in an ultraviolet setting. She was shown graphic imagery of human war scenes, blood-stained and dismembered bodies. The implied communication during the scene was, see what humans are doing to one another, war after war, senseless killing. The imagery had the effect of upsetting the woman to tears and causing her to be ashamed to be human. The aliens then flatter the victim by suggesting that he or she was specially selected, singled out to be an emissary. Bo and Pete demonstrated what can happen. Many contactees will have a worshipful adoration for the extraterrestrials after their abduction, as if we should follow their lead. Yeah, that's a packed that's a packed one for sure, you guys. Definitely recognizing that, the name of that chapter again was Psychic Vampires, and recognizing, that all the different levels of manipulation that can play out. I'm definitely wanting to continue to highlight within here that, again, the more difficult we become, the more knowledgeable, again, saying the intelligence, right? Question things, research things, learn things, share these things, be open about it, and don't hide it, really helps take the power away from them. This is the key thing that is being said over and over. And truly, the more difficult we become in that way, we start to become useless to them through some of these experimentations. So, chapter 20, Star Seeds. Based on the reports of several contactees, I believe the aliens could be conditioning the public to a naive mindset, a mental state designed to suspend critical thinking. This is especially apparent in abductees and UFO spiritualists who think of themselves as chosen star seeds. In this context, I'm referring to the false light star seeds as opposed to the true light bearers. If one observes closely, the false light can be discerned from the true light. The true light bearers are not afraid of exposing the dark and have spiritual discernment. The false light bearers display incongruence in their actions and beliefs and naively focus on the positive elements of extraterrestrials while in denial of any negative alien abduction material or their own. Or they blame all negative abduction reports on the military and black projects. They lack discernment and may exhibit repressed trauma and duplicity as well. I have encountered more than a few abductees who prefer to call themselves starseeds or contactees. Some contactees have even gone so far as to claim that the extraterrestrials have created the entire human race, which to them explains the difference between Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal and the disappearance of Neanderthal during the late Ice Age. In other words, these true believers believe because it is, after all, an act of faith. And we owe the aliens a debt of gratitude for assisting us in our evolution. This implies that the pyramids could not have been built without them. The same holds for Newgrange and Stonehenge and hundreds of other ancient temples. This idea got started a generation ago when Eric von Däniken brought out his series of highly controversial books with names like Chariots of the Gods. Although hundreds of books came out to poke holes in the pseudoscientific theories, literally millions of people bought into the idea that the UFOs were here thousands of years ago and that they were influential in ancient societies. His ideas implied that without the aliens, the airplane and the radio would never have been invented. Von Däniken was never able to prove any of his ideas, but his theories grew like microbes in the public imagination. Unfortunately, I cannot go into detail explaining all I've been told when it comes to how the aliens control and condition some contactees into promoting their agenda. Many of the control factors that the aliens exert over some abductees border on downright demonic activity with the added twist of high technology implants. The effect of such psychological warfare tactics is to keep the abductee and public at large at a minimum level of understanding. If the aliens were true nature in their true nature were to be known, they would lose ground in the spiritual warfare. I repeat, spiritual warfare. from the alien's viewpoint is to drive us away from our traditional beliefs of love, of family, and especially our definitions of God, however pluralistic they may be. If the aliens succeed, they place the victims in a constant state of confusion with all manner of conflicting information. It also keeps the abductee in awe of the alien's apparent high technology and all powerful intelligence. It seems important for the alien presence to make us believe they are omniscient when in fact they may not be. The abductees are force-fed lies and half-truth, conditioning them into feeling disdain and contempt for their fellow humans. For example, the contactee may feel disgust for humanity's warlike and selfish nature, condemning it in favor of a newfound love and worship for the spiritually advanced extraterrestrials. These peace-proclaiming contactees vehemently oppose anyone who challenges the extraterrestrial agenda, accusing revisionists of being fear-based. I have personally encountered abductees who fear speaking out in public about anything negative or giving the aliens a bad image. In one case, the abductee was being manipulated through deception, fear, and even physical pain to promote the extraterrestrial space brother propaganda through the internet. Spiritual warfare on the part of the aliens' warfare is exemplified by the love bite itself, and I am sure the aliens have manipulated relationships and emotions for specific purposes. The matchmaking aliens may very well be what our ancient myths spoke about with Cupid and his arrow. In a few cases, the love bite experience hit the person over the head like a magic love spell, removing all critical reasoning ability. Alien-induced obsession dramas may occur in the aftermath of abductions in which the sexual energy has been spirited away and diverted to alien use. The experiments and probes used in many of the cases may even be designed for the harvesting of emotional, sexual, and creative energy. The alien lust for human energy, both pain and pleasure, and the methods they employ strangely echo tantric, Buddhist, and ancient Hindu sex practices. In Kenneth Grant's book, Aleister Crowley and the Hidden God, the author tells us how Crowley used ancient tantric rituals known as the Vama Mars to attain power from sexual energy after prolonged withholding of the orgasmic response. This technique can only be successful through a special woman, a selected love mate, who has the right tantric kundalini match for that priest. This again sounds like what the aliens are doing. The correct selection of the woman is of the utmost importance, as she is the only one who can facilitate the creative energy through the magical tantric sexual union, one that is not necessarily orgasmic, a process also known as karaza. In Hindu lore, the connection is also known as yab yom. This may not even involve physical contact in some cases, but always involves the draining off of the kundalini or serpent power coiled up at the base of the spine at the Muladhara chakra and pelvic center. Most Western secret societies claim to have been in contact with non-human intelligence over the years. Aleister Crowley's Lamb was described as a typical gray alien. It was this being who dictated to Crowley the book of the law, but Crowley admitted that to obtain the power, it was necessary to engage in numerous sexual rituals with a scarlet woman. In other words, in the alien agenda, sexuality of many kinds, and specifically sexual intercourse of a mysterious kind, must be performed with a specifically conditioned and selected woman of the cosmic life force to be transmitted to the aliens. According to the sexual magic practices, if the fire snake or the kundalini rising unwinds too rapidly, or if the primal power ascends up the spine before all 7 chakras are balanced, the power is deflected and all sorts of neurotic traits develop, most importantly, enigmatic obsessions. The natural goal of the kundalini is to reach the mind, the ajna chakra, for a joyous illumination and higher state of consciousness. This experience is usually described as the clear white light realization. You'll know if it happens to you. Furthermore, it can crumble your mind if you're not properly prepared. Gurus and yoga masters from Patanjali onward warn adepts of the dangers of evoking the serpent energy in a person not properly prepared to receive it. The serpent energy is said to shoot forth venom with poisonous vibrations which can attack the unprepared individual. In Western black magic, this process can be used with deadly effects. Materializations of interdimensional beings and demons can, some say, be called into full reality. Faust, forging a pact with the devil, in a case in point. This intake of the venomous vibrations, cynicism, sexual perversion, narcissism, and negative thought can bring any human into direct contact with the demonic worlds and the lower elementals. Conversely, if done with impunity, the properly trained can direct these currents to transform human consciousness, making awareness possible on many transcendental levels. In Janice's and Alex's case, the aliens communicated to Janice that your bonding is no longer useful to us. This response implies that the bonding dramas created are for some temporal purpose, whether for extraction of life essence or creative energy, or to bring certain persons together for a specific reason. Janice, Sophia, and Angelina continue to have encounters involving other bonding partners, instigated by the aliens. In one event, Janice recalled standing in a dark place, close to another man. She could distinctly feel his soul essence, and she empathically knew that this man felt what he felt like, his thoughts, his feelings, his desires, as if he was part of her. The alien's message during this abduction was, remember this person, he will be important. Janice had a dream wherein Eve did not bite the apple and the snake was forced to move on to some other couple. Not long after this experience, Janice, but she didn't fully realize the setup until she had a dream flashback. The man in her dream, Adam, wrote Janice a letter a week later. They shared similar goals and interests and felt a deep spiritual connection. This relationship has been a platonic friendship for Janice, but became a romantic obsession for Adam. But she was amazed that his name was Adam, a man she had met only a few weeks after having a dream about the biblical Adam and Eve. Synchronicity? Maybe, and maybe an implanted suggestion. Another woman described how she believed she was set up with a targeted love by partner by being sent via out-of-body experiences to have astral sex with an intended male. She claimed that after she heard on telepathic trigger cue phase, she would immediately feel the strong passion for the man and make love to him in an out-of-body sexual melding experience. Within days after the actual astral sex episode, the targeted partner began contacting the woman, and the two described a strong psychic connection with one another. Coincidence? Could it be possible to create bonds with one another in such a manner? One sad question may never be answered. Why couldn't the aliens have just soul bonded the woman with their current husbands? That question seems difficult at first, but if we then assume the aliens want us to experience a certain degree of existential pain and want to lead us away from a kind of innocent happiness, the answer comes quickly. The aliens are exploiting our suffering. Knowing these basic secrets sheds a whole new light on the possible motives of the alien behaviors when the sexual element in obsessive love matches are created. Once we focus on the lover's drama, we can see how the aliens play the abductees like one big Nintendo game. This may be for the study of human soul energy. As mentioned in the opening section of this book, the aliens seem to be orchestrating a type of psychic rape. Let me end this chapter with a case history drawn from the past, a magical masking process quite similar to the ones used by the aliens in their human accomplishments, was reported in Mallory's Morte d'Arthur, this standardized story of King Arthur, and in the case, Merlin, the druidic master magician, is the figure who orchestrates the final outcome. When Mordred lusts after Ygritte, the wife of King Mark of Tintagel, he falls from power. He becomes obsessed and even psychotic, frightening his family and his most loyal subjects. Not only does Ygritte reject him, she tells him that he is repulsive to her. Mordred, knowing that even in pagan times the rape of another man's wife is a mortal sin, and he could do nothing but pine away. But eventually Merlin enters the stage left to solve the problem. Like Rumpelstiltskin, Merlin promises to cast a spell on Mordred, which will make him look exactly like King Mark. But a price must be paid. Merlin must receive the issue of any said mating. He will take the child away, and Mark shall never know of the horrible replication and trickery undertaken in his absence. Merlin arranges to have Mark ride out for a military mission on the northern border, and during the hiatus casts the spell that will allow Mordred to appear as Mark in Igraine's bedchamber. She willingly sleeps with Mordred, thinking he is Mark, returned early from his trip, and becomes pregnant. This then is a case of rape by stealth, psychic rape. As specified in a devilish contract, Merlin takes the child, the future King Arthur, away to be raised as a fosterling. The fact that the great King Arthur is the result of this rape does not justify the deception, but in Celtic myth, Arthur becomes the redeemer, and this justifies the calumny of his birth. The same sequence of events occurs in Irish myth when Dectine is impregnated by a ray of light near an ancient stone cave and bears a son named Setanata, who is subsequently raised by the druid and warrior Conchobor to become a redeemer hero. So this one has a lot to it, and I wanted to actually just very quickly, and oh my goodness, I'm just peeking over here to the live chat. So much love, Cosmic Heartbreak. So much love to you. I really appreciate so much. And to 100 years from now, thank you so much for the many blessings and for being here during this live read. This is such an incredible experience for us to look at this, because yes, there can be this sense of naivety that comes from this idea of being the star seed, so to speak, within this. And we want to recognize that all of this comes from this higher level of discernment, that there is so many layers of manipulation that can be played through here. But one of the things I want to highlight with this as we're looking at this is the reason why so much of this plays out with the sexual energy. And I love that she started to touch into this with the tantric energy. It's really important for us to recognize that it's not that the tantric energy is bad. It's, in fact, it is part of our cosmic awakening energy to utilize these sacred energy centers within our body. So it's not much different than the misuse of the CDT plates, recognizing that, for just a way of saying it, magic is magic. Therefore, magic can be utilized in a way that is in divine law. But just as well, knowing the recipes or the spells or the way to incant the magic can also be used by a dark magician for negativity and bad. And that's what she was perfectly bringing up with Aleister Crowley, is that basically taking true esoteric spiritual mechanics that are meant to elevate and awaken our chambers of expansion and consciousness. But if you can utilize those with a dark heart and through black magic, that reversal can actually bind. So this is important for us to recognize, especially when we are really uncanting, unspelling, unbinding, unwinding all the spells, curses, and superimpositions. We can realize that many times knowing the spells, knowing the incantations, and then being able to undo them is how we can begin to clear a lot of these bindings, especially through the sexual energy centers. And then I invite, of course, it's a big thing for our Flame Holders group, is working with the womb chakra healing. So I definitely invite any of you working with the womb chakra, if you are doing those papers to burn away all sexual connections with anyone in the past in order to clear that energy, don't forget the aliens. add them to the paper, add them to the list in order to burn that in the sacred fire. Chapter 21. We just have a few more within here. We have about 10 more pages. The Alien Redeemer, Chapter 21. My research tells me that the aliens and their human benefactors will use any method possible to achieve their goals. One of the most common cover alien screens is to pose themselves as the Messiah or Redeemer. This guise also takes the form of any rabbi, teacher, or guru the target person may respect. How could this work? How could an alien fool a devout Christian or Jew? It turns out everyone has a weakness. Some devout people are not fully sure about their faith. It is generally held that the Redeemer, the teacher, or the righteous of the Dead Sea Scrolls, for example, was sent to atone for what is called original sin, an idea that stretches back into pre-biblical times. Surely we can see Eve's bite in the apple as a simile for the love bite itself. Both result in emotional disasters. Eve, the apple, and the serpent, the temptation, and the garden. The great flood and all of the attendant symbolism is, without question, a vague memory of the events of the Stone Age, possibly even the end of the final ice age, known as the worm epoch. These apocryphal legends were told and retold in tradition for millennia before they were transcribed into biblical text, recalled by the mythographers of the Bronze Age. The Redeemer archetype arises from ancient animalistic religions in the winds and winds its way into Judeo-Christian lore by the specific bloodlines. These bloodlines tend to develop in a priest class known as the Zadok line. Moses was a redeemer, as was Abraham, and the mysterious priest Melchizedek. In Hebrew, although we could easily use any number of saints and philosophers as examples, it seems Melchizedek, the high priest of the line, is precisely relevant to the love obsession because he was a three-faced figure, a priest, a king, and a god. In this trilateral sense, he is the purveyor of the marriage vow, love, honor, and obedience. In a Christian marriage, he is the embodiment of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, who oversee all Christian vows, including baptism, and he represents a perfect picture of the Holy Father, the Mother, and the Redeemer child. This can be taken to almost infinite extremes as life, death, rebirth, and so forth. Melchizedek is therefore the priest god or philosopher king championed so highly by Plato, a living representative of the one true God and the repository of all philosophy, an early disguise for the knowledgeable man. The Gnostic mystic known in literature as Hermes Trismegistus. He is the first mentioned in the book of Genesis and appears several times in the Torah and the Bible. In every case, he is linked to a genetic line arising through David and Jesse, the tree of Jesse. This same line produced in the Virgin Mary and Mary Magdalene and all of the brethren that surrounded Jesus during his trial and transcendent experience. But the line also continued on long after the era of Jesus through the living apostles, especially Philip, the sons of James Boanerges, and also known as James the Just, the brother of Jesus, and several others. The tradition of succession and sequence of passing the torch, of champion defeating champion, emerges from one of the deepest fountains of human understanding. We could not live without competition and challenge. It is what has formed us as humans, and we are vain. The aliens know this and take advantage of our need to excel and to pass along information, perhaps even to become one of the elite or chosen ones. The aliens do nothing more than give us the recognition we crave. The Redeemer screen plays interior to the starseed drama. To repeat, certain contactees have been promised a place in the future paradise for their blind cooperation now. The program, as it has been told to me several times by totally unrelated people, is designed in a team management model. The Gnostic model works more effectively and against the aliens, or any fascist for that matter, by teaching individual action within a tribe or cod. This concept of elitism is almost completely erased, except for the pride one takes in observing the education of others. Old Testament Christians here a valid echo of the implications that Jesus was an anointed member of this baptizing Melchizedek line. The Gnostic view is gaining popularity. A huge library of texts once buried in Egypt has now been published as the Nag Hammadi Library. But it is important to realize that the aliens have probably read every book we have and thus have come up with a strategy to exploit or explain away any and all forms of wisdom. By this I mean we can be weakened by our best traits. With mystic Christians, Christ, and the priest king, they are all synonymous, but Orthodox Jews have a very strict test for the advocation of the Messiah. With strict New Testament Christians, Jesus Christ's name is not based on the concept of a priest king, but rather the Father, Son, Holy Ghost Trinity. But here comes the weak spot. May you be mystic or conservative, the results are the same. Both old and new interpretations result in the idea that salvation comes through an intermediary, a Messiah, or a Redeemer. The aliens apparently see this as an opportunity and can make subtle tweaks to their cover story in order to adapt to a very specific victim's belief system. The idea is to get you to see them as a surrogate redeemer. If this is true, if the aliens are simply ranking opportunists, if they are purposefully setting out to psychologically rape people and cast them into a life not worth living, it tells us a great deal about their spiritual beliefs, specifically that they have none. Maybe they are advanced. Maybe in their world there is no God, but in ours there is, and the aliens hold no respect for our beliefs, our gods, or our many different forms of worship. The Redeemer appears throughout the generations in different forms. She comes as Joan of Arc, or he can take on the form of King Arthur, Emiliano Zapata, Buddha, Jesus, and many others. In other words, mankind is constantly on the lookout for a Redeemer, both in fiction and in real life. Every time we elect a new prime minister or president, we pray that he or she will be someone who will come down to our mundane plane and fight for our battles. Democracy is structured as a form of natural mysticism, and that, to me, seems healthy. Sadly for us, the aliens are not interested in our childlike governmental systems. I am a scientist. I thrive on it. But the aliens are a classic example of what would happen if we relied solely on technology and used no other methods. Losing our hearts in the process, the aliens seem to have placed themselves in the role of the Redeemer and constantly try to replace our need for redemption, mate selection, sexual orientation, fellowship, and tribal life with their own agenda. Both Moses and Jesus promise that we can lead a just and moral life. The questions are then, why are we still being harassed and manipulated by the aliens? Why have some humans joined them willingly? Why does it seem like the world is still controlled by evil? Perhaps there really is a war being waged in heaven as prophesied in the book of Revelation. If the aliens are so intelligent and spiritually involved or immortal, why would they need the love bite? And why would they need to extract our soul energy? Have they lost their hearts and a full capacity to love? Aliens cannot be the redeemers because they do not give us anything. They take away energy and give nothing in return. A true redeemer will never take the breath of life and what the Egyptians called the Ka away. In Zen Shinto and in some forms of Asian military training, it is called Ki, defined in Western terms as awareness. The ancient Celtic warriors practiced a form of meditation which brought them in touch with the Dagda, the spirit of awareness of life, the spirit who watches over us, the good shepherd or shepherdess who guards us, all the animalistic spirits which permeates all things. This is my opinion, is really what the aliens are after. The aliens, especially the reptilian types, need this from us. They apparently have some ability to emote, but they have a disdain for humankind. They cannot love like we do, but they are fascinated by our ability to do so. And they do experience what can be called anti-love. When human beings lose their ability to love, they quickly die, both spiritually and physically. And life, death, and rebirth process, the aliens are, in my opinion, studying. Spiritual warfare took place in the Garden of Eden, and it continues almost as if it is a condition for life itself. How exactly do the aliens play out the spiritual warfare from their point of view? As an abductions researcher and counselor, I have seen people continually victimized by the dreams implanted by the aliens, especially erotic and perverted suggestions encouraging pedophilia and sodomy. Aside from bloodline research, which is beyond the scope of this book, aliens, spiritual warfare follows no racial pattern. No one is immune. African Americans and Caucasians, Latinos, Asians, all suffer the alien scourge in proportion to the normal distribution of our populations. Christians, Jews, even good people who practice a neo pagan life have been abducted and turned into semi slaves. There are, however, a few selective trends emerging from the growing database of abductee reports. In Christic Gnostic thought, Adam and Eve were created in the beginning to be holy sons and daughters of God, but were thwarted by a ruling archon who fought them with deceit and jealousy. I believe the earth is a spiritual war zone, and when we are in the front lines, we may get hit, even if we are good soldiers. Life on earth seems to be the ultimate testing ground for new spiritual weapons, even if we do all the right things prayer, righteousness, etc. We may still experience setbacks and attacks. Some enlightened UFO researchers, such as Brian Levins, prefers to reframe these challenges as necessary fertilizer for true spiritual growth. The covert behaviors of the aliens and those who are their servants reveal their deceit. They know that if their knowledge is leaked out, many future victims would be able to defend themselves. The very name of Jesus Christ and any reference to demons creates a knee jerk response in the UFO community. Buddha is also passe. Perhaps it is too late. Perhaps the aliens have already usurped the power of the Redeemer archetype. So I will definitely leave that chapter for you to be able to just kind of think on those thoughts. That is definitely her theorizing and her perspective into to some of those thought forms. It's really that whole chapter. The chapter 21, Alien Redeemer, is just a huge question mark. That question mark that we all have. What is their agenda? What is their purpose? What are they doing? And I think there is no one answer, and that's why the question continues. So as we move on to chapter 22, Occult History, just so much love to all of you guys. The book that we are reading is Love Bite, Alien Interference in Human Relationships by Eve Lorgan. This has been a tremendous journey as we're just into the last few chapters here of this book. Occult histories. There are numerous sources of information that address the parallels of demonology and folklore tradition within extraterrestrials. My aim here is to address the similarities and other pertinent observations that I have made in my own work with abductees, rather than quoting literature references. The first parallel is the interdimensional and paraphysical nature of the aliens. Their ability to materialize in our physical dimension out of thin air is a prime example. The apparent telepathy ability of aliens is also reported in demonic and angelic encounters, or even with some very psychic humans. In occult practices such as witchcraft, the witch or the warlock will invoke familiar spirits for special knowledge or power ability. These abilities may include precognitive or divination abilities, astral projection, telekinetic abilities, and mental control over others. As the witch or warlock gains more familiar spirits, she or he increases their personal power and psychic abilities accordingly. Many abductees have some sort of clairvoyance and have experienced paranormal and even poltergeist activity in their lives. There is a question about why they tend to have heightened psychic sensitivities after their abductions. It is also known that a great deal of clairvoyance comes from people after they have been frightened and or had a near-death experience with or without alien interference. Something normally happens in the rhinocephalon and the midbrain, which heightens our ability to think past our own footsteps. On the other hand, some abductees claim they have been modified. Some abductees have reported the indwelling presence of a gray or reptilian within them. A few have been observed by their close associates and lovers to have momentary appearance of a serpent being, replete with snake eyes, reptile body, scales, and webbed fingers. I believe that these spontaneous shape-shifting observations are paraphysical or psychic in nature. Some very sensitive abductees are able to clairvoyantly perceive the aliens as interdimensional beings superimposed within certain individuals whom they believe to be hosts. Some abductees, such as Dr. James L. Walden, author of The Ultimate Alien Agenda, describes his experience and identity as a multidimensional or interdimensional reptilian human hybrid. Walden describes it as having another body, in this case, an interdimensional reptile being who coexists with him. But instead of being outside of himself, he recognizes this to be part of himself, being able to coexist in another dimension or reality. Other abductees have reported that they have found themselves in another dimension as an alien. Sometimes during abductions, they become an alien in the abductions. They alternate their identity of sorts. Dreams or in hypnotic regressions, many have described having a past life as an alien or extraterrestrial. I have spoken with alternative healing professionals who have witnessed the exorcism of alien gray beings out of individuals. In more dramatic cases, I've interviewed at least 3 abductees who have had reptilian encounters, report reptilian demonic possession ranging from minutes to several hours. In the case of Angelina, her neighbor became momentarily possessed by a demonic being, writhing on the ground, grunting, hissing, and salivating in the mouth. In another case, the who has seen reptilians and grays in his abductions was taken over by a reptile spirit during or being in the fourth dimensional for several hours. He described it as a very frightening, controlling, evil force that he had to muster every ounce of willpower to fight this thing and regain control. During the possession, he saw himself outside and inside the body at the same time, on all fours, in an animal-like fashion, growling and hissing as a reptile would. This also happened in an anonymous abduction case where a drastic personality change transpired. In another anonymous case, the abductee was observed to have indwelling reptilian entities moving through them after a series of metaphysical healing and psychic exercises in a locale near Sedona, Arizona, which was known for paranormal activity. These astral pods or alien entities caused the individual to become ill and immobilized until the situation passed. Needless to say, it was very frightening for the abductee. In one of Angelina's experiences, she recalled being taken to some kind of facility where human military personnel was present. She was told to sit down in a chair and was surprised to witness another alien being, which was a gray, come out of her body and stand next to her. As the military humans had a conversation with the entity that coexisted within Angelina, she was shocked and had no idea that an entity had even been living inside of her. In another case, the abductee was led by extraterrestrial spirit guides to perform certain psychic and healing exercises in a special location, which was some kind of energy ley line area. What may have happened from a metaphysical level is that these psychic exercises somehow led to the opening of an interdimensional portal where the entrance and exit of aliens, reptilians in particular, increased. This increased paranormal activity as well. In many occult practices, the specific reason for performing certain rituals is to create an interdimensional doorway or an access point for spirit beings. Once this has been done, the poltergeist activity and alien encounters may increase. This may be what occurs on some haunted houses. In the Ted Rice case, the reptilian creature goaded Ted's grandmother, Grandy, into having sexual relations with the image of her dead husband. What was noteworthy in this account was the reptilian's angry reaction to her protective use of the name of Jesus Christ. Throughout Ted's early life, his alleged spirit guides had a tendency to deter him and his spiritualist friends from pressing deeply into his alien abductions. Instead, the spirit guides put forth metaphysical explanations. Propaganda line of these spirit guides was to give the extraterrestrial theory of consciousness raising twist. What Ted discovered in his encounters was quite the opposite. Sophia privately told me that the more she focused on God and closing the doorway of sin in her life, the less frequent her alien encounters became. This implies to me that at least some of the aliens get off on emotional energies. For example, she believed that the more she obsessed about her love bite partner with her sexual fantasies and dwelling on the negative thoughts and emotions, the more she was accosted by the alien phenomena. And as soon as she shut down the obsession, the aliens began to leave her alone. Sophia also has reported experiences in which she was able to tell the aliens' grays to leave in the name of Jesus, after which they disappeared, like a vapory smoke popping out of the thin air. Sophia admitted that the more she was involved in the occult, for example, channeling classes, psychic readings, and so forth, the greater the frequency of alien and poltergeist activity. She also said that during the late 1980s, she was being led telepathically to go to Arizona and New Mexico for a mountain trip, at which time she had abduction related experiences. Gradually, Sophia learned how to use prayer, counseling, and healthy communication skills to decrease the alien activity in her life. Angelina has experienced both alien and military abductions. She, like Darlene, has been a victim of psychic rape by demonic entities and has called upon the name of Jesus and Archangel Michael successfully. Yet she still battles the negative entities from time to time. At times, Angelina experienced abductions as an actual non dream physical event in which she was taken through an interdimensional portal in the bedroom wall. The aliens have been seen entering and exiting the same portal locations throughout her house, and she describes the doorway as a dark area which expands like a black void and will literally pull her through, much like in a movie, Stargate or The Matrix. During these times, she has heard nondescript voices on the other side, as if there was like a laboratory or a workshop. On other occasions, Angelina recalls being pulled through an interdimensional portal into another reality. In this extra reality, medical procedures and training sessions took place. Sometimes the aliens or military people would come through these portals into the room. Most often, Angelina would find herself in the new environment after she was brought through the portal in a dream that felt very real. In these dreams, she experiences medical procedures and all manner of psychological testing and training exercises. On one occasion, Angelina was so frightened she prayed and recited the rosary while she was saying that a human military, that's not going to work. We're not demons. Perplexed, Angelina then decided to test them according to what she recalled at Mass. She asked the man, well, did Jesus Christ come in the flesh? To her surprise, the man appeared caught off guard and responded, yeah. In a number of encounters, Angelina was able to discern humans from reptilians. She recognizes the smell of a reptile as a dank and a bit like mildew. She also has been able to discern whether a reptilian is really a shapeshifter in the image of a human. It should be noted here that reptilians have the ability to change their image like chameleons. The reptilians are known to take part in aggressive sexual acts, sodomy, rape, etc., because sometimes it appears to be an act of territorial possession of their victim. There is also a type of reptilian sexual encounter that some female abductees have reported to be sexually stimulating. They have described it as the most arousing type of sex that they have ever had, resulting in heightened orgasmic response and a rising of their sexual drive in an unnatural degree. At the same time, some of these female abductees have been coerced into the sexual encounter and may be paralyzed during the sex act, although their body may respond. If the female continues to have these kinds of sexual liaisons, they may turn off to human males. In Angelina's case, the reptilian handler acted in possessive ways so as to prevent her from having sexual contact or desire for her own husband. The method of switching off Angelina from her husband included an overt reaction to human male pheromones and possibly mind control. The reptilian also behaved jealously towards Angelina's husband. It is not known whether this was a true emotion or a masked reaction designed to elicit a response. Some female abductees who have experienced the heightened orgasmic response of reptilian sexual contact also have remarkable clairvoyant faculties. These females report that during lovemaking with their human partners, their passion is ignited, and they have observed paraphysical energy vortex swirls in the room. It's as if the sexual energy creates some sort of interdimensional vortex, and once their base chakra center has been opened and manipulated by the reptilian being, or in some cases sexual magic practices, this rare phenomena could possibly occur in those persons who have had a natural kundalini awakening as well. So just all sorts of ways in which that energy definitely can play out in our life. It's kind of it's kind of wild, like listening to this, right? Because it as you listen to it, it can start to bring this question in the back of your mind, to a lot of just difference in. But then again, that is really what breaking out of the matrix truly is, that we are literally in a Maya, an illusion within this place, that we have to realize that, like a holographic reality, there's so much that's been projected on us that unfortunately we do need to go through a healthy questioning of everything in order for us to attune and connect to. And I will say, from the work especially that we do, especially the work that we do within, say, the flame holders, as we build our energy bodies, as we attune to our divine connection, what we are doing is we are stepping out of looking outside of ourselves for anything. We are connecting to the cosmic energies within. I feel this is one of the most powerful energies for beginning to not only illuminate all truths, but break free from all of these types of energies and to not be accosted or to have to deal with them anymore. Chapter 23. We're looking now at poison maidens. Alien activity is similar to black magic practices in many ways. In black magic type witchcraft, not the naturalistic magic practices by nature worshippers, certain toxins, poisons, and implants are inserted into the victim by the use of push pins, soot or ointments, curse pins, crystals, nail pens, and even by kissing. In several ancient cultures, primarily the Celts, women were used as spies. These women were usually beautiful and familiar with the enemy's wants, desires, and habits. Once studied, the enemy could be seduced or turned into a zombie-like creature, or a wider scope of attack was if a wider scope of attack was needed, the water supply would be poisoned, as was done against the Romans by the great British Queen Boadicea. The poison maiden label came about by the use of kissing as a method of toxic application. The women would build up their immune system by taking small doses of poison over many months until her saliva was deadly enough to kill a Shetland pony. Simply kissing this woman would kill a large man. A pinprick coated with the blood from a poison maiden would also kill overnight. The same technique was used by Celtic warriors to contaminate their spear and arrowheads. Feeding poison in small doses to an older horse and then rubbing the spearheads with the horse's blood amounts to an early form of biological warfare. Even a slick nick from one of these spears or arrows would disable an enemy soldier, rendering him too sick to fight the next day's battle. Rebecca Brown, author of He Came to Set the Captives Free, is well versed in assisting those coming out of satanic and black magic cults. She points out that objects, much like alien implants inserted under the skin, are designed to act as object links or even poisons in their victims. In voodoo, these implants are made of sharp chicken bones with the hollows filled with toxins. In the Orient, bamboo slivers are used. Brown describes several different types of inserts that are used in black magic, including biochip implants. She asserts that these inserts are used like object links, a type of anchor to connect the magician to the victim. The aliens use both physical and virtual implants in the very same way. Their methods are high tech, but their motives can be just as injurious. Most alien inserts are placed directly under the skin in an area difficult to self inspect. In essence, these implants are used as anchors which keep the victim under control. Some believe they are being activated through subsonic radio waves and extra low frequency signals. But whereas the medieval or early Romans poison technology will kill or stun the victim, the aliens technique is far more sophisticated and is designed to control and track the victim even during dreams. Etheric implants can act as homing devices. In the case of the aliens, there is an intelligence involved in what will trigger reactions in the abductees in response to certain thoughts and behaviors. For example, one abductee started having severe pain in her implant site while on the way to a UFO conference where information on abductions would be discussed. Other abductees have suddenly come down with angina and chest pains before support group time, so they could not attend. Other reactions are the sudden onset of trance-like state of sleep while at lectures where sensitive UFO subject matters were being discussed. Many have reported the onset of severe headaches while searching for a book on abductions or related UFO material. This implies that the aliens can register the thoughts of their victims by distant viewing, either psychic or electronic in nature. Also, like black magic, the reptilians can use personal items of the targeted individual to allow them easy access to their physical space. These items are referred to as object links. One abductee of the reptilians was instructed to decorate their home with Gothic style objects and crystals, presumably to facilitate an interdimensional portal entry into the home. Bill and Sharon Schnoblin, authors of Blood on the Doorpost, describes one couple's discovery of small blue curse pins scattered throughout their home. These objects were used to create an interdimensional portal for the demonic entities to harass the newly converted Christian couple. In this case, the couple had defected from a satanic cult and were experiencing a type of reprisal. These reprisals have been reported in persons who channeled powerful demonic beings, and after they give their lives over to Jesus Christ and stop channeling. Both physical and etheric implants have the effect of controlling the abductee. Some researchers, such as Bill Baldwin, believe that these implants are nothing more than attached alien entities or even demons. The reptilians may use etheric implants to connect and control the abductee through their sexual chakras. This is reminiscent of how Cupid's arrow works in mythology. Yeah, that's pretty important, and it's a great way of also why it's helpful to actually do a lot of clearing around the house to basically just deprogram things, to do lots of purging. The salt clearing process, probably one of the most powerful things to actually deactivate a lot of those things. Chapter 24, Sex Dreams and Cupid's Arrow. Many abductees report dreams that resemble being invaded or pierced by an alien presence. This is similar to the image of Cupid shooting an arrow at targeted lovers, but beyond Cupid, we also see that each of these abductees reports having gone through some kind of training, leading to bonding with targeted love partners. I call these sessions Cupid arrow sessions. These experiences take place in vivid dreams and feel as if they are stage managed. But clearly, the Cupid's arrow scenarios are a form of the love bite overall plan, except instead of being bitten, the victims feel they were struck dumb, like being injected with rifampicin or morphine or some other mind-numbing drug. It is difficult to discern whether some of these Cupid arrow sessions are actual physical events or some kind of mind control staged managed dreams. This has been postulated in a previous chapter as an astral melding done by the abductees themselves, but under the triggered programming of the aliens. In either case, the perceptions of the abductee are seriously altered or manipulated, making them think their abduction experiences are dreams of some type of virtual reality scenario. In Angelina's case, she finds herself tranced out and lost in another reality, complete with physical sensations. In those abduction dreams, various humans in lab coats, military type personnel, and occasionally aliens instruct her in training scenarios, military combat, parachuting jumps into water, telepathic exercises, and medical emergency techniques, all to be used when the end of the world finally does arrive. To test the abductee, the aliens are notorious for presenting erotic dream images to the subject, especially depicting sex acts that they might not normally perform. In a few cases, the aliens projected erotic sex with an unlikely partner. In the sexual training sensations, Angelina has found herself in a generic hotel room with the targeted love bite partner in a queen sized. Telepathic messages and sexual ideas are directed towards the couple. They are urged to have sexual relations until a substantial bond is created. Most often, the abductee will recall or experience these sessions as vivid dreams. On several occasions, Angelina found herself in an abduction related training session with her friend Scott, who is also an abductee. In their echolocation, they were both placed in a mock war situation where their mission was to retrieve something important amidst a number of distractions, one of which was the temptation of a sexual scene. Sophia recalled two bonding incidences in a stage managed dream where she believes her reactions to stimuli were being monitored. In one of the bonding scenes, Sophia found herself in bed with another male abductee, whom she detested. The prop consisted of the same generic hotel bed with white sheets and pillows. The targeted male partner was in a trance like state, screaming about a painful procedure that was just done on his temples. This bonding scene was similar to one described by Janice and Alex. Sophia felt sorry for him and touched him gently to ease his pain. She felt a strong physical desire to be close to this man, but refrained from sex. The noteworthy thing about this experience is that it was mutually a shared dream with the other abductee friend of Sophia's. Although Sophia knew the man she was set up with in real life, she was too embarrassed to ask him if he recalled the dream. Sophia's friend observed the bonding scenario as Sophia did, but the friend saw the humans in lab coats sending the sexual suggestions to Sophia and the bonding partner. She also remembered some kind of silver light beam that was used to do painful procedure on the man's head. Both Sophia and her friend woke up very tired with a headache and thirsty, not alcohol related. She remembers the stage managed dreams with the other male who also recalls bonding dreams with her. Although their dreams and experiences were different, both had the impression that they were being set up for bonding in real life. Likewise, Sophia found herself in a stage managed dream which tested her feelings towards the targeted partner, as if the drama directors were trying to figure out what kind of mannerism Sophia would desire in this man if he was to be her lover. James, Darlene, Angelina, and Scott have also experienced mutually shared dreams. On one occasion, all four were present in an abduction dream, whereby several abductees were instructed by alien greys to lie down while covered in a wet substance. The Greys were observed to be humans by one person, yet Scott saw them as Greys. Angelina asked the doctor what they were doing as they were injected a warm, almost hot liquid via tubes into her forearm and wrist veins, and the other abductees present. The doctor replied that this procedure was to mimic the near death experience, to see how you will handle it. The other elements that were mutually shared in the dream were a pool or lake surrounded by a hilly green lawn area and a concrete checkered sidewalk near a camping area. Darlene and James recalled a distinct sensation of hot, suffocating, and near panic while in a dream. Scott awoke the next morning with wet, slick back hair. He did not go to bed with wet hair, and needle marks on his wrist area and forearms in the same place where Angelina remembered seeing the injection take place. None felt sick the next day, and it was my belief that this mutually shared dream may have been an actual physical event, albeit with distortions. Darlene and James have had several mutually shared training dreams. One such dream was being placed or locked in a dark storeroom, like one would be like the one that would be behind a grocery store. Darlene recalled that in the dream, James kept on trying to convince her that this was an abduction, while Darlene was denying this and continually replied, "No, it's just a dream." Both realized that they could not get out of the dark room, and so she told James that the only way to escape was to astral project. They both concentrated their mental energy and projected themselves out of the darkened storeroom. Darlene and Scott recalled being placed together with their close knit group of 5 other abductees in a variety of dream situations in which they all experienced emotional extremes. For example, in one scene, one person was very angry with another. Then, in the next situation, they were in joy and laughter, love, grief, and or pain together. The net effect of the training was to become closely bonded to one another by interacting under very high emotional extremes. Many abductees are sensitive individuals who can discern the difference between a normal dream, an abduction scenario, or even a stage managed dream for the purpose of testing and training. Sometimes the alien testing themes extend into the daily life of the abductee. For example, a male abductee named Chris was shown the image of a woman he was to meet, a woman that he had been bonded to in previous experiences. The woman's face was impressed in Chris' mind, so he would recognize her when they met. The woman also had a bonding experience with Chris in a dream, and when the two met, they had a strong attraction to one another. Although both were married to others' partners, the emotional and physical attraction was difficult to resist, and they had the perfect opportunity to have an affair. It was as if their meeting one another was orchestrated so that they would experience the opportunity and temptation to spend the night together. Both of them decided not to follow this compulsion. As Chris left town, he received a telepathic message. The message from the aliens was, "Congratulations, you passed the test." At that point, Chris knew his life experiences were set up at times by aliens for the purpose of testing him. Many of the virtual reality scenarios depict future apocalyptic disasters, including major earthquakes, starvation, homelessness on a mass scale. Angelina is instructed to decide upon a moment's notice which persons are to be chosen for survival in secret locations and which ones are to be left to forge for themselves. The selection process was based on the person's usefulness. For example, a doctor may be chosen above others because he or she has special skills that can help others. Some of these exercises involve knowing how to operate firearms, planes, UFOs, and decision making under extreme duress. On one occasion, Angelina awoke the next day to find that her legs were tired and sore, as if she'd really took part in training on a physical level. In addition to this combat training, Angelina and other abductees have described being told that they can breathe underwater or in tanks containing special liquid. Some have described finding themselves in large locker room facilities with other abductees, sometimes nude, waiting in line. Many are told to use their psychokinetic abilities to move objects, psychic healing, telepathic communication, and even dual consciousness exercises while out of the body. The key to accessing hidden information about abductions is to crack the lucidity barrier and to understand how one's dream imagery can be juxtaposed amidst a true core abduction experience. This experience may take place in a physical realm or in an alternate reality. I want to pause just to actually bring awareness to this very statement right here. And that is that the key to accessing hidden information about abductions is to crack the lucidity barrier. The more we practice dream lucidity, dream practices, the more we can actually wake up within these scenarios, so to speak, and have the discernment within these. So this chapter is actually really great in describing all of the different kinds of manipulations that can come through these dream scenarios and then how to actually learn how to catch them. So again, I wanted just to highlight the key to accessing hidden information about the abductions is to crack the lucidity barrier and to understand how one's dream energy can be juxtaposed amidst the true core abduction experience. It's really a key thing. I think one of the biggest key things for starting to break the abduction. While writing this book, I plan to visit Angelina to retrieve more information regarding her recent abductions and training exercises. Several days before making the trip, her children suddenly came down with the flu, and we had to cancel until the next weekend. The following week, Angelina noticed an unidentified man taking a quick snapshot of her as she was looking out her kitchen window. He left his white, unmarked pickup truck behind in the backyard and with the engine running as he quickly took a picture. Then, within a half an hour, Angelina finds that she's very sleepy and wants to take a nap. She lies down for a short nap and immediately falls into a comatose state in which she can move her eyes but no other muscle in her body. She tries to break the paralysis but cannot. She hears someone in her room rustling through her drawers and chests and taking something. She awakens later to find that her three dream journals are missing. A human being had entered her home, but what was he after? What was in the dream books and what could be of use to the human helpers? Some very sensitive abductees can discern various levels of types of bonding experiences. At least three female abductees have reported that in certain states of consciousness, they could sense the energy field of the targeted love partner around them as if they were interacting with them in the flesh. This relatively unknown concept is known as telesthesia. These do not seem to be hallucinations, but a type of psychic connection. It is remarkable to note that for women who report these virtual reality lovemaking encounters, the other partner responded in some way in real life as if they recalled the interaction, even if only on a subliminal level. Were they linked as in a relational database, a computer program that communicates with its separate parts or automatically? Or did the aliens orchestrate each and every level of the communication as if to censor and control everything? Both abductees who experienced the bonding connections were too embarrassed to ask the corresponding partner if they remembered anything unusual. But in both cases, the targeted partner either called, corresponded, or did some deed out of the ordinary that signaled some kind of interaction may have taken place on other levels. In Sophia and Dave's case, both were in tune with one another's feelings. If one was thinking or fantasizing strongly about the other, the recipient partner could sometimes sense a correspondent physical sensation. In psychic research and in work with twins, this phenomenon is sometimes referred to as Corsican effect, after the famed novel of the Corsican brothers. In that novel, twins separated at birth felt the presence of the other even without the knowledge that they existed. This effect was also observed with Angelina and Steve. Could the aliens be manipulating the sexual energies in which these kinds of perceptions are sensed? Can the love of one partner be so strong as to create a near physical sensation in the beloved? Cupid's arrows seem to catalyze a whole cascade of synchronistic connections and supernatural events. In the case of Sophia, the intensity of love and depths of despair brought her to a much deeper intimacy with her true beloved, who she described as a fatherly Trinity figure. The spiritual survival mechanism helped her stave off the side effects of the abduction and seemed to catalyze a profoundly spiritual experience. In mythical terms, to become struck by Cupid's arrow means a love spell has been cast. Such may have been the case in Sophia and Dave's relationship, whereby Dave believed that his independent dream catcher was an aspect of Sophia like a twin alter. This twin could have been sent to indwell or activate Sophia through a series of deliberate lucid dreams. Conversely, Sophia's telepathic dreaming may have enabled her to pick up on Dave's romantic ideas, which in turn incited her to fall madly in love. The arrow works both ways. Mia Adams' story demonstrates an elaborately orchestrated bonding drama between an abductee and an FBI agent codenamed Jordan. And Jordan experienced, whereas Mia maintained a non-committal role. Both Mia and Jordan were watched by government operatives, FBI, and other clandestine groups during their relationship to be the key point of interest for Alien Experiment, involving human bonding of people who share synchronous energy fields or common genetic material, or specifically mitochondrial DNA, which can only be passed through bloodlines maternally. As a researcher, it is my opinion that human government and alien intelligence cooperated to a certain extent in this human bonding program, so that in this case, Cupid could easily be shooting for governments of the world. There's just literally like two more pages. I know we're going a lot longer today, but I want to go ahead and just knock this book out. There's just these couple more pages within here, literally like two more pages. Chapter 25, Agape and Cupid. Love is the greatest mystery of all. We strive to know it, experience it, and feel it at its fullest. For the few who have experienced love at the hands of the aliens via the love bite, there was a price to pay. Once they felt the ecstasies of such an incredible love connection, it was difficult to break the obsession. Were the aliens trying to create love addicts so that they could use the victims as a resource of energy? Agape love, unconditional spiritual love for another human being and the human race in general, borders on mystical experience and is not dysfunctional. I believe an awareness of this kind of love is the perfect antidote for the love bite. Eros is considered more of a romantic love, yet with strong mystical overtones, having its mythical origin long before Cupid shot his arrow into lovers like Romeo and Juliet or Tristan and Isolde. Cupid, whose name implies a kind of randomized fate, is actually a Roman representation of Eros, the son of Aphrodite and Ares, usually depicted as the winged cherub armed with a bow and a quiver full of arrows. In Roman myth, Cupid is also called Amor, which is usually imagined as the son and companion of Venus. It is amusing in the context of the present discussion that Eros is sometimes attended by his brother Anteros, who is said to be the avenger of unrequited love. Some theorize that Cupid is actually a representation of a very old and widely disseminated archetype of the divine child, the offspring of a god or goddess coupling with a human. For example, the Immaculate Conception of the Virgin Mary with an angel gave us Jesus. In Persia, this archetype was Mithras, who was born holding a bow and arrow. He shot into the tree and it sprang a living water sprang from its roots, the water of life. We see a similar miracle when Jesus strikes the rock marriage feast of Cana, an agape to create wine. In Greek poetry, Eros, as the precursor of Cupid, was often a willful and unsympathetic god, carelessly dispensing the frenzies and agonies of love to unsuspecting victims. This is the kind of activity and behaviors instigated by the aliens, who will match up two targeted love partners for the bonding experience without much regard for the excruciating pain the couples may be forced to undergo. Both forms of love bite were reported by several abductees mentioned in our case logs, as well as the many who have not yet mentioned. In some of these cases, the love obsession brought the subject to the heights of indwelling with the beloved and to the depths of despairing grief. For example, the profundity of Sophia's mystical experience threw her into a creative frenzy of passionate prose, poetry, and prayer. Her absolute grief from lost love plunged her into the abyss of helplessness until she carried out to her Father in or cried out to her Father in heaven. Sophia answered prayer revealed a profound mystery. Not only did she prove her faith, she realized the power of prayer, and she was suddenly able to control herself and the obsessive behavior caused by the love bite. The father figure in heaven asked her to be his spouse, to be married as a Catholic nun is married to Jesus, the so-called bridal mysticism, and is well documented by numerous writers, not the least of which is Saint Bernard himself. It is profoundly spiritual work. Delindio Dio on the love of God, Bernard of Clairvaux, discusses the differences in the types of love acceptable to the church fathers. He is especially irritated by the erotic kind of love suggested by Alberlade and hopes that all women will subscribe to the purest spiritual love as practiced by the Virgin Mary. In Sophia's case, the father commanded her to renounce her sexuality, even referring to it as a molestation, and to redirect her fixation on Dave to a kind of maternal love. Sophia believed the beloved father figure used Dave's image until she was able to feel a purer love. Only after this perfect love was achieved could the Father reveal himself to her in his true image, which appeared as a trinity of Father, Son, and Beloved. In other words, Sophia found peace only after she saw herself as both the mother and the bride of the Beloved. Sophia believes her alien orchestrated bonding experiences were a grand test from the Father himself. Or was this her way of coping with just another alien manipulation? For the first time in Sophia's life, she knew what unconditional love and passion was. Sophia claimed to have come face to face with the archetype behind the beloved image, described as the Don Juan archetype. Had powerful mystical experiences with the Father and Son as one, a spiritual communion, a sense of agape. Thereafter, she began to understand the true mystical meaning of Christ and the sacred marriage. Some would say that Sophia's experiences were delusional or that she was being duped, but to the best of my knowledge, everything Sophia told me was derived from her genuine experience. After therapy and daily prayer, Sophia is no longer afraid and now believes the Father will utilize a variety of beings, including angels and aliens, good or evil, to carry out the depths of human experience for his own beloved children. In this light, it becomes unimportant who the aliens are or what the agenda might be. The only true important element is the realization of self as one with God, i.e., the Father as one. This lies behind the higher virtue, a form of selfless, unconditional love that cannot be affected by the love bite. That is not to say that aliens directing events behind the scenes are a benevolent bunch. Quite the contrary. Sophia beat the odds. In all other cases, and especially in the case of Ted Rice, the aliens appear to be indifferent to our needs. We are humans. We expect them to be sympathetic, but perhaps they simply do not possess the capacity for love as we know it. Janice and Sophia found their way clear of love bite through following a path towards mystical surrender. In Janice's love obsession, her life almost fell apart. To put herself back together, she learned unconditional love, agape, for another human being. In Sophia's case, her family and her faith saved her. The last, and this is literally just these words right here. The cathedral of the heart. The human heart is a muscle with the many chambers and twisted connections. When we say we are heartbroken, we usually are. Heartbroken people often experience heart attacks, of a kind doctors will find difficult to explain. Heartbroken people suffer far more um, angina pectoris than normal people and have far more problems in life. The greatest pain is of the heart. I believe there are some resilient souls in the world who have been graced with the divine gift of experiencing life at its fullest, with all of its intense highs and lows. A friend of mine was taken on a very special tour of Cartis Cathedral in the geodesic center of France. His guides, a well-known alchemist named Fulcalani, told him a story which was reflective of the heights and depths of human spirit. He was told that the cathedral itself, especially at the point of the baptismal font, represents the Sacred Heart of God, a heart which is available to anyone who stands on the spot. Above his head rose the great spire of the sun, one of the tallest in Europe, which juts into the sky exactly 150 in the opposite direction beneath the pavement. His guide told him a sacred well plunged the exact same distance into the earth. This well is designed to catch the rain, thought of as God's tears that fell to the ground. The water as the baptismal font come from the well by the capillary action in the font was never empty. So as we come to completion within this group, I do find it interesting. She definitely she definitely kind of hooked. And again, I think she took a very scientific perspective and was really working with whatever she was being shared by her clients and patients that she was working with, and recognizing that many of them basically did take, and towards the end she really goes kind of more into kind of like a Christian kind of slant within it. But I would want to say that within there that it really is about this singular devotion within the self of connecting to our higher self. There is such a power within that, for sure, the true cosmic love, the divine love that we recognize when we don't look for anything outside of ourselves, that we can be aware of all the different multiple types of alien beings out there. This book that we just went through focuses primarily on the love bite and the negative alien experiences that can happen that can cause manipulation, pain, trauma, and suffering within our life. This is important for us to recognize just as much as we look into all of the other influences of aliens upon the planet that I definitely, would say that their influence has been here from the beginning, and that in many ways, we are connected in some way, not as being controlled by them in any way, and recognizing that in any unhealthy relationship, whether it's with a human or an alien, we want to utilize our sovereignty and our discernment. And with so much love, thank you guys for sticking with me through this entire read. I am so grateful to all of you on the live that rode this through for me. So much love to each and every one of you. I love you so very much. Please take this information however it may be helpful to you. If you need a safe place to connect, to balance some of these things that might be coming up for you, please reach out with Becca.com. There's amazing ways that we can be able to support each other. Love you so much. Have a beautiful rest of your evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. And